This is Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Two questions together there, Minister.
Yeah, I propose to take questions 7 and 41 together. The 2009 Renewable Energy Directive sets all Member States a binding target that 10% of the energy used in the transport sector must come from renewable sources by 2020. The directive also requires that all biofuels used to meet the 10% target must comply with certain sustainability criteria. That is, they must not be made from feedstocks sourced from certain categories of land and must achieve certain greenhouse gas emissions reductions. This time last year, the EU Commission proposed a set of amendments to this directive and the Fuel Quality Directive to mitigate the potential effects of indirect land use change occurring as a result of the use of certain biofuels, sending a clear message to the market that second-generation biofuels were preferable to land-based biofuels. One of the amendments proposed was to limit the contribution from certain crop-based biofuels to limit the contribution that they can make towards renewable energy targets for transport in EU member states. The Commission considered that the scientific models used to quantify the ILUC emissions were insufficiently robust to incorporate binding ILUC factors in the sustainability criteria, which would have precluded the use of biofuels with high direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions. The Commission also considered that such an approach would require major industrial restructuring that would not be achievable within the 2020 timeframe. Therefore, the Commission proposal is that the requirement to incorporate greenhouse gas emission factors for indirect land use change is confined to the Member States' reporting obligations with respect to emissions. The intention of this amendment is to introduce greater transparency and highlight the relative performances of different categories of biofuels in terms of their ability to reduce carbon emissions. I share the concerns being expressed that biofuel production and its use, unless properly regulated, could impact negatively on food production and on food prices. I also acknowledge that those biofuels could also lead to increases in greenhouse gas emissions, which would be contrary to one of the objectives of the Renewable Energy Directive. At the Energy Council meeting earlier this year, I conveyed the need for Member States to be cognizant in the discussion of the proposed amendments of the potentially adverse impacts of biofuels on land use in developing countries. In this regard, Ireland has argued for a restriction on first-generation biofuels and for incentives to encourage the development of advanced biofuels that do not affect food production. Ireland's preference is to see as low a cap as realistically achievable to mitigate the potential conflict between biofuel use in the EU and land use in the developing world and the potential for higher greenhouse gas emissions from certain categories of biofuels.
Deputy Maureen.
Okay. I've listened to what you said there in your answer, but there is a lot of concern and a lot of alarm that Ireland hasn't joined the group in the EU who are committed to the 5% cap. Countries like the UK, Netherlands, Denmark, Finland, Belgium and Luxembourg. 27 EU commissioners signed off on the 5% cap. Back in March, I had an exchange here with Minister Costello, and in that he said to me, Ireland is supporting the 5% cap. You yourself, when you met the NGOs on this issue, you also made the point that they made a very compelling case that there wouldn't be a higher rate because you were aware of the negative impacts for some countries if it was higher than the 5%. It's like the Minister for Trade and Development and Foreign Affairs is saying one thing and you're saying something else. And in that exchange back in March, I asked him, were the discussions with you? And he said he'd only been speaking to you the previous day about this. Well, I don't think you were talking about biofuels on that day because, you know, this commitment to the 5% was brought out at the Mary Robinson Conference on Climate Justice and Change that Ireland was part of the host countries there. The 5% is the compromise at the moment, not what has been replied to in your answer.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
The Deputy is incorrect, Las Concordia, or else my advice and my own direct knowledge is incorrect. First I've ever heard of 27 commissioners signing off on a 5% cap. Never happened, or if it was happened when I was President of the Council, nobody ever told me about it. And far from some of the countries that you read out agreeing to a 5% cap, they were quite opposed to the line that I was pushing as President of the Council. Nor is it true that the Parliament has approved a 5% cap. The Parliament voted in favour of 6% reduction last Concordia, and that's the cap they sought. The Lithuanian presidency has come forward with a compromise proposal last Concordia for a 7% cap, and even that is being resisted. I think Ireland might support that, although we would prefer to see a lower,
Thank you, Minister.
a lower ceiling. But that is the latest position, as I understand it.
Deputy Sir.
Well, I mean, Minister Costello said Ireland is supporting the 5% cap. That's on the record in the Dáil. There's absolutely no doubt that, Ireland is a very generous country with our foreign aid. We contribute 20% towards hunger eradication. What is the point of giving it with one hand and taking it back with the other hand when we're not committed on the biofuels issue? No doubt, I mean, the NGOs were in touch with me today on this, and no doubt there'll be further following up on this matter. But it is disappointing that we're saying one thing from one department and the other department is not joining up. The dots are not coming together on this.
Come on, final reply.
No, I'm afraid that's not the case at all. The deputy is misinformed. Last Concordia, after I met the NGOs during the Irish presidency, I undertook and did intrude their arguments into the debate in Europe. And I have to say to Deputy O'Sullivan that it got a very cold reception from some states. And if I thought there were a blocking minority there in the morning, I would support it. But it's not far from the list you read out. There isn't even a blocking minority, nor is there universal approval of the Lithuanian suggestion of a 7% ceiling. In any event, I'll ask Concordia, in case I don't get in this again, can I just say, for the information of the House, that the best and most recent advice I have from Brussels is that this matter, known in the lingo as the ILUC issue, is unlikely to proceed to finality in the lifetime of the present Commission or the lifetime of the present Parliament. I'm particularly intrigued by Deputy O'Sullivan, and I know she wouldn't make the statement unless she believed it to be true, that somewhere 27 commissioners signed off on 5% ceiling. That is completely news to me, and if she has some evidence on it, I'd be glad to get it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now go on.